Natural capital is one approach to ecosystem valuation which revolves around the idea, in contrast to traditional economics, that non-human life produces essential resources. Thus, ecological health is essential to the sustainability of the economy. In Natural Capitalism, Creating the Next Industrial Revolution, the author claims that the global economy is within a larger economy of natural resources and ecosystem services that sustain us. In order to continue to reap the benefits of our natural environment, we need to recognize the importance of natural capital within the economy. According to the authors, the next industrial revolution depends on the espousal of four central strategies: the conservation of resources through more effective manufacturing processes, the reuse of materials as found in natural systems, a change in values from quantity to quality, and investing in natural capital, or restoring and sustaining natural resources. In a traditional economic analysis of the factors of production, natural capital would usually be classified as land, distinct from traditional capital. The historical distinction between land and capital defined land as naturally occurring with a fixed supply, whereas capital, as originally defined, referred only to man-made goods. For example, Georgism. It is, however, misleading to view land as if its productive capacity is fixed, because natural capital can be improved or degraded by the actions of man over time. See Tragedy of the Commons. Moreover, natural capital yields benefits and goods, such as timber or food, which can be harvested by humans. These benefits are similar to those realized by owners of infrastructural capital, which yields more goods, such as a factory which produces automobiles just as an apple tree produces apples. The term natural capital was first used in 1973 by E. F. Schumacher in his book Small is Beautiful, and is closely identified with Herman Daly, Robert Costanza, the Biosphere 2 Project, and the Natural Capitalism Economic Model of Paul Hawken, Amory Lovins, and Hunter Lovins. Recently, it has begun to be used by politicians, notably Ralph Nader, Paul Martin Jr., and agencies of the UK government, including its Natural Capital Committee and the London Health Observatory. All users of the term currently differentiate natural from man-made or infrastructural capital in some way. Indicators adopted by United Nations Environment Programme's World Conservation Monitoring Center and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) to measure natural biodiversity use the term in a slightly more specific way. According to the OECD, natural capital is natural assets in their role of providing natural resource inputs and environmental services for economic production, and is generally considered to comprise three principal categories: natural resources stocks, land, and ecosystems. Within the international community, the basic principle is not controversial, although much uncertainty exists over how best to value different aspects of ecological health, natural capital and ecosystem services. Full cost accounting, triple bottom line, measuring well-being and other proposals for accounting reform often include suggestions to measure an ecological deficit or natural deficit alongside a social and financial deficit. It is difficult to measure such a deficit without some agreement on methods of valuation and auditing of at least the global forms of natural capital, for example value of air, water, soil. Ecologists are teaming up with economists to measure and express values of the wealth of ecosystems as a way of finding solutions to the biodiversity crisis. Some researchers have attempted to place a dollar figure on ecosystem services, such as the value that the Canadian boreal forest's contribution to global ecosystem services. If ecologically intact, the boreal forest has an estimated value of $3.7 trillion. The boreal forest ecosystem is one of the planet's great atmospheric regulators, and it stores more carbon than any other biome on the planet. The annual value for ecological services of the boreal forest is estimated at $93.2 billion, or 2.5 greater than the annual value of resource extraction. The economic value of 17 ecosystem services for the entire biosphere, calculated in 1997, has an estimated average value of $33 trillion per year. These ecological economic values are not currently included in calculations of national income accounts, the GDP, and they have no price attributes, because they exist mostly outside of the global markets. The loss of natural capital continues to accelerate and goes undetected or ignored by mainstream monetary analysis. Whilst measuring the components of natural capital in any region is a relatively straightforward process, both the task and the rationale of putting a monetary valuation on them, or on the value of the goods and services they freely give us, has proved more contentious. Within the UK, Guardian columnist, George Monbiot, has been critical of the work of the government's Natural Capital Committee and of other attempts to place any sort of monetary value on natural capital assets, or on the free ecosystem services they provide us with. In a speech referring to a report to government which suggested that better protection of the UK's freshwater ecosystems would yield an enhancement in aesthetic value of L700M, he derided attempts to compare things which cannot be directly compared. Others have defended efforts to integrate the valuation of natural capital into local and national economic decision-making, arguing that it puts the environment on a more balanced footing when weighed against other commercial pressures, and that valuation of those assets is not the same as monetization.